On the surface, Trae Young's late-season finger injury doesn't seem all that consequential, with the All-Star's 4-week absence merely impacting the Eastern Conference's depressing play-in race. But dig deeper, and you'll find this could be a monumental turning point for the Hawks. Don't be shocked if Ice Trae has played his last game in Atlanta. Based on the Hawks' initial injury update, the torn ligament in Young's left pinky will keep him out until at least March 24th, which would still leave 13 games of wiggle room on Atlanta's regular season schedule. But that's a best-case scenario. Sure, he can keep his conditioning up and the injury is on his non-shooting hand, but it does require surgery. And it's important to remember that Young will only be re-evaluated after 4 weeks, so an April return date seems more realistic. And that's where things get dicey. If the Hawks were playing for something of significance down the stretch, had legitimate championship aspirations this spring, or even just had a different outlook for the future, welcoming an all-star back at any point before or during the postseason would be a no-brainer. But let's be real, this is a 10th place team that was 8 games under 500 before losing Young. Even with their franchise star in the lineup, their best case scenario for this season was needing to win 2 play-in games just for the right to get their asses handed to them by the top-seeded Celtics in the first round of the playoffs.
I know that sounds harsh, but it's true.
That might fly for up-and-coming rebuilders, but it shouldn't fly for a Hawks team that made a very significant win-now trade almost 2 years ago. With 2024 also representing the last year Atlanta controls its own first-round draft pick until 2028, the Hawks fit the mold as the type of team that should punt on this season if things start to unravel. And the fact Young's coming off surgery should make it easier to skirt the league's new anti-resting rules. While it is possible DeJounte Murray, Jalen Johnson, Bogdan Bogdanovic and company keep things from unraveling in Young's absence, this is still a losing team staring down the Eastern Conference's 4th toughest remaining schedule. So now you know why we might not see Trae again this season. And once we get to the offseason, all bets are off when it comes to his tenure in Atlanta. The Hawks are one of the teams in most dire need of a shakeup. Since making a stunning run to the East Final in 2021, when they played at a solid yet still unspectacular 47-win pace, the Hawks have been a consistently mediocre play-in team. They've been a losing team overall in Young's 6-year career, they've lost the minutes he's been on the court, they're on their 3rd coach in the last 4 seasons, and they're barely closer to contention today than they were when they drafted Trae in 2018, despite a significant infusion of talent over the years.
What have we been doing all this time?
Though Young has remained statistically productive and is still only in his mid-20s, he also deserves a fair share of the blame for that stagnation and dysfunction. A prolific scorer, breathtaking passer, and pick-and-roll maestro, no one can deny his place among the league's best offensive players. But Trae's shortcomings leave more holes to fill in the team-building process than bigger, more complete stars do. He's an ineffective and often unwilling off-ball player who isn't just a bad defender. He consistently rates as one of the absolute worst defensive players in basketball. All of that helps explain why rival front offices reportedly believe the Hawks will finally be willing to entertain trade talks for the 3-time All-Star this summer. Even in the unlikely event the Hawks take off with Young out of the lineup and make something out of this season, that would only embolden them to find an off-season trade partner. The highest profile team Young will be linked to is the Lakers, as once the 2024 draft is complete, Los Angeles will be able to attach up to 3 first-rounders and 3 pick swaps to Austin Reeves and salary filler. That's a pretty enticing package, but there's a team out there with even more draft capital to offer, thanks to the Hawks, coincidentally enough, and an ascendant superstar who could accentuate Young's strengths and mitigate his weaknesses in ways few other co-stars could.
The Spurs have a lot of trade capital. There's a lot of talk about them being a star next to him. What kind of star do you think would be next to a guy like Victor Wembanyama?
Anybody, the kind of player that can help him win a championship. Make his job easier for him. Somebody who can just help him. So that's the type of player he needs around him.
Young and the Spurs, or rather Young and Victor Wembanyama, are a match made in basketball heaven. Wemby's freakish talents will have the Spurs competitive sooner than later, but he desperately needs a point guard to play with. Trae's on-ball brilliance, shooting range, and playmaking combined with Wembanyama's off-ball and finishing talents would make for a devastating offensive duo. Meanwhile, the big fella's otherworldly combo of length and mobility would protect Young like never before on the defensive end. Imagining the ways these two could amplify each other's games is intoxicating, while the Hawks could recoup the draft capital necessary to build a post-Trae future. Like the idea itself that Trae's time in Atlanta might be up, it just makes too much sense not to be explored. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video and want to see more content like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button.